the night before the visit, about 5:00, a call comes into the Republican National local headquarters saying, I'm a Marine, I'm a crack shot, I'm going to take out the president tomorrow. And oh man, obviously we took a curveball there as far as I thought I was going to have a nice, easy day. Now what do I do?
I'm Steve Murphy, DEA Special Agent retired and now host of the Game of Crimes podcast. If you've seen the Netflix series Narcos, then you know my story. I now bring you stories of heroism and bravery from our law enforcement and military heroes, and occasionally from the criminals that they faced. Welcome to Game of Crimes. Hey, gang, welcome back to this week's edition of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Another fantastic guest this week. We were just talking about some things that happened this weekend that we're going to get into, and I know you guys are going to be interested in it. And I'll just tell you right now, this man is a 25-year veteran of the United States Secret Service. We've never had a Secret Service agent on this show in 5 years, believe it or not. We did have a uniformed division officer on here who ended up going to DEA and was one of my best friends, Tommy Golden. But this man was on the protection detail for first Bush, George H.W. Bush, which I'm interested to find out a little bit more about that. And then he became a polygrapher. And out of that 25 years, he spent 17 of those years as a polygraph examiner. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. He also instructs others on how to detect deception and illicit information. He spent many years getting people to tell the truth, even when they didn't want to. I'm not going to let him ask me any questions because I don't know how that'd go. And on top of everything else, he's a student of jiu-jitsu, and I bet he didn't know I knew that. But ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Brad Beeler to the show. Brad, thank you so much, sir.
Murph, it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate you giving us your time here. How far up are you in jiu-jitsu?
I am a brown belt, so I need to step it up. I've been doing it for about 12 years. Lucky to have Gibson Sa, amazing practitioner, born and raised in Brazil. That's our instructor. So he keeps pushing me to try to get that black belt. So I need to step it up. But it's been a wonderful way to kind of decompress from some of the bad cases that I've had to deal with. So I use it as a coping mechanism.
Oh, good man. Good man. I use a lot of stupid comedy and self-deprecating humor, and life's an adventure, but it's just too short to take really too serious, especially in retirement.
100%.
So, and very quickly want to give a shout out to two organizations. One is the Illinois Drug Enforcement Officers Association. I had the pleasure and honor of speaking there a couple of weeks ago with a friend of mine, Owen Hansen. If you don't know who Owen is, go to Amazon Prime and look up Cocaine Quarterback. You'll learn. We have a little thing going now. So guys in Illinois, thanks so much for the shirt. Brad, if you don't know anything about me, you'll learn that free is me. Okay.
Smart.
I offered to pay. They gave it to me anyway. So I'm going to show it off. The second is to Shani over at Sharks Digital Media for introducing me to Brad here. She's introduced, she did the introduction with Barbara Butcher. If you remember her, she was the lady, the death examiner, investigator in New York City with the medical examiner's office there. So, Shani, thank you so much for this. I truly appreciate your support. So, Brad, let's get into you, brother. First question for you. Tell us, what kind of kid were you? Were you an athlete? Were you a troublemaker? Were you a bookworm? What were you?
I guess I would say I was an athlete. Kind of grew up in a family of athletes. All my sisters played college sports. I played college soccer. So kind of grew up as an athlete. But small town, Union, Missouri, about an hour west of St. Louis. And as a product of the 70s and 80s, I grew up wanting to be Poncherello from Chips or John Baker, take your pick. Scooby-Doo, A-Team, Dukes of Hazzard, and some of my favorite movies, Red Dawn. So it was always the good guys won, the person in the white hat. No one ever got hurt, and we always saved the day in 30 minutes or an hour. It was that easy, right? So law enforcement is going to carry the day. So that was me, yeah.
I know our careers were like that. I mean, 42 minutes and we got the crime solved.
Yes.
In our dreams.
Yes.
You said all your sisters. How many are there?
3. Yeah, 3 sisters. So I'm 3 out of 4. So I got 2 older and 1 younger. And yeah, all athletes, all great people. Mom and dad, both in public service. Dad was a teacher for 50 years, local teacher at the college level. So public service was always something that they kind of instilled in you. It's not about the money; it's about how you impact other people's lives. So I think that was big for me.
Excellent. And I know you went to college. Where'd you go to college at?
University of Missouri, St. Louis for undergraduate and graduate work. Criminology. A lot of us people that go to law enforcement think that that's the way to go. It worked out well, but I will say you are pigeonholing yourself. Looking back now, I'd say get a broader degree where if law enforcement doesn't work out, you got some other options. But I was blessed to have the opportunities I did educationally.
Well, back when I was going through it was the criminal justice was becoming popular, but a lot of people were doing poli-sci and
sociology.
It didn't do a whole lot for me.
No.
So I did the CJ and the psychology as the minor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking back, you'd want to go to accounting or maybe learn Farsi or Mandarin or something like that, right?
Yeah, no. You know what they say? You got to know your limitations.
Yes, I got you. Self-assessment.
I'm just happy if I could pass my checkbook. I can't imagine running an accounting spreadsheet. Oh, actually, I did take accounting and didn't do real well in it.
Yeah.
You just got to know your limitations there.
Yeah, there you go.
Did you always want to be a cop when you were a kid growing up?
I would say, growing up with a green machine, I was always the person, driving around trying to catch the other kids in the neighborhood when we were playing cops and robbers. I was always wanting to be the cop. So a little bit in that aspect, but it wasn't until I interned with the Secret Service that it really kind of cemented for me, because I saw in college the men and women how, and I know you feel the same way, is that when you travel overseas, it's all about the brotherhood. It's all about people that can take care of you. It's about, if you are traveling, having men and women that can go take care of your family when you're not there. That just cemented for me. This is a great mission. It's a great organization. And most importantly, it was great people. So that was what really drove me to, this is something I want to do. So then shortly thereafter, grad school, after I got my master's, I was in juvenile justice for a while and did that for about 2 years. And then was lucky enough, we had a big hiring ramp up in the late 90s. And that's when I got in the Secret Service.
Did you ever think about going local?
I did, and it was right. I was putting in applications right as I got picked up. So I look back, and you see that at the academy for people that weren't local or weren't military. It's almost like you got that scarlet letter, like you didn't earn your stripes in certain respects. And I was blessed to have my first training officer be a fourth generation Chicago cop, and he was from the south side of Chicago. Still wore his grandpa's call box key around his neck. So he had forgotten more about law enforcement than I've learned in 27 years. So it was great to have somebody like that shepherding you through the process. And when you don't have that, it's a problem.
Well, so I hadn't thought about this, but how long is the Secret Service Academy that you have to go through?
So it's the typical CITP down at FLETC, so the Criminal Investigator Training Program, the first 3 months. And then after that, we do a 3-month academy, probably similar to your follow-on academy up in Beltsville, Maryland, where we learn Secret Service stuff, protection, very specific investigations regarding counterfeit and electronic crimes.
When you joined Secret Service, were you thinking, I'm going to protect the president?
Oh, yeah. I grew up, I don't know how old I was, 7, 8, when I saw Reagan get shot outside the Hilton. And you see that and you're like, wow, right? And I met Clinton during my internship. And the interesting thing about that is Clinton's amazing, he's got a magnetic personality when he shakes your hand, and everybody says that. But it was one of those things where I was looking at the counter snipers, I was looking at the counter assault team, I was looking at the working shift, and I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. You see Air Force One, in the background, and you're like, this is for me. And then I'm sure we'll go through my career as it goes, but some opportunities presented themselves, and I ended up having a career that was more like guarding tests versus in the line of fire. For people that understand those late 80s, early 90s movies, I was more taking care of grandparents than I was running alongside the limo.
Mm. And so I mentioned at the beginning, you mentioned also being on first President Bush's protection detail. Is that something you have to volunteer for, or are you selected?
I think around the time when I got there, it was more of a selection, and for multiple reasons. One, it was a great assignment. Summer in Maine, living in Houston, we got Houston cost of living, so that was wonderful. And you didn't have to be in DC with very inflated housing costs. Now, that was work-life balance. That was having a conversation with the family, which was so important about what we wanted to do long-term. I wanted to get back in polygraph. Up that point, I'd already done one stint in polygraph, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed reaching out and working with the locals on their criminal cases because it let me see homicides, rapes, robberies, and child exploitation cases. But the opportunity presented itself, and I get a call. I put in for it, and they had an opening, and they said, "Can you pass the swim assessment?" Because they needed rescue swimmers and they needed boaters. Bush was always on the water up in Kennebunkport. So I was able to pass the swim assessment. It's a 3-week school that the Coast Guard puts us through. They try to drown us for 3 weeks. And then we have a 3-week boating school. And it was great because you got to drive the old man's boat, the president's boat. And you got to, something that I will never be able to drive a very expensive boat like that, especially and be around those situations. So it was a great detail with a great family that respected the agents, and they never traveled on Christmas. They always waited because they wanted the agents to be able to celebrate Christmas with their families, and just wonderful, wonderful human beings. I mean, this is a guy that was shot down in World War II. One of the great ironies of history, he bails out and is just outside Chichijima just off the coast of Iwo Jima. And the USS Finback, of all things, largest ocean in the world, hears a splash, puts the periscope up, and there's an airman in the water. And then you can see them pulling him on board. And what are the chances? You wouldn't have had 2 U.S. presidents if that submarine wouldn't have been there, because I think the tide was going to Chichijima, which was still Japanese occupied at the time. So history would have gone a lot differently.
Wow. And you just took the wind out of the sails of the next question. I was going to say, all right, give us some scoop on President Bush and his personal life. Man, it sounds like a hero all the way around.
And then CIA director, first emissary to China. He was the person that established that, and just a true patriot. And my son turns 21 today when this is filmed, and I'll tell you a little story about, the last day we were on the detail. They were very gracious. They took my wife in, and Barbara let her try on the pearls and all that in the house up in Kennebunkport. And in the meantime, my son was getting some wisdom from Bush 41 about life, which that's pretty good that you're getting wisdom from somebody that's got an aircraft carrier named after him. He's on all fours playing with their dog. And Doro, the daughter's dog, has a little boxer that comes up behind him and starts humping him. Well, the reason that story is important is he doesn't know what's happening. He's about 4. He looks to the left and smiles right as Barbara takes a picture. And so Barbara, we were traveling to St. Louis, which is my next duty assignment. And I can just get this email, and it just says Barbara on it. It says in the subject line, "for future blackmail purposes." And it's my son smiling at the camera while he's getting humped by the dog. And that's what I'm going to show him at his birthday party tonight. He has no idea it's coming. So by the time this airs, we're not letting any secrets out.
Excellent. Excellent. What's his name? What's his first name?
Andrew,
happy birthday, buddy. So yeah, I'll try to talk your dad out of it. No, I'm not. It's going to be funny. But you know what? Isn't that what children are for, is to embarrass 100%. As they grow up?
100%.
We got so many pictures that we want to show at weddings.
I got a good one.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like it. So just to back up a second, when you come out of the academy, what are your first assignments in the Secret Service? And then how does that progress to where you're actually on a president's detail?
Yeah, so I was in the counterfeit squad, which, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize is that dual mission with the Secret Service is since 1865. And another irony of history, one of the last things that Lincoln signed into law was the establishment of the Secret Service, because almost 25% of currency in circulation was counterfeit. The Confederate States of America used it as a weapon of war, trying to devalue and inflate currency. So that's what he wanted, people that were worthy of trust and confidence. He got with Alan Pinkerton, one of the great detectives of that era. And that's what they established was the Secret Service. It wasn't until 1901 we took over protection after we lost our third president in McKinley. And then obviously we've learned a lot of lessons since then with Kennedy and Reagan in 81, and then all the way up to this weekend at the Hilton. So I started in counterfeit, and then I went to organized crime, which we dealt with a lot of advanced fee fraud coming from overseas, credit card fraud, identity theft, mortgage fraud, those types of things. And then my first real protective wake up call was I was on W's, so Bush 43's presidential run in 2000 with the hanging chads and all that. And that was an amazing experience because you're on them for 3 weeks and then you go off for 3 weeks. But during that 3 weeks, you're 24/7 traveling with them. And he was a runner and he tried to kick your butt every time. And, that was about 40 pounds ago for me. So that was a lot better runner at the time, but, he was a great athlete, and it was wonderful to be around, him and, Barb as well, just to see them. Just really good people.
I know they are an inspirational family all the way around. I mean, I know our kids grew up, and you look at Barbara almost like the nation's grandmother. She's just had that look about her,
Yeah, 100%.
And it's fantastic to hear good reports about people like that, because others, you hear, I don't know how much of them's true or not, but you hear not so good of reports about some of the other presidents and their wives.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, you hear certain things. I'm not just throwing you the Kool-Aid, Murph, is that I've had great experiences with all of our protectees, foreign and domestic. Even Ahmadinejad, when Iran, I was on the Iranian detail when they came into the United Nations, and you have certain beliefs as far as who these people are and how they're going to treat you. And the Iranian Secret Service had an amazing kit. They had great training. They were very respectful. They were always on time, great communication. And as you know, I mean, you have some of the best foreign experience working with foreign nationals. When you have that type of relationship, that's everything. And that's what makes the mission. So all the foreign details that I worked with, I can think back about in Japan. Here I am. I'm in a stairwell in Tokyo working with a Secret Service agent from the Japanese side of the house. And for 3 days, I'm using Google Translate to have a great conversation with him about his life. And he's from Nagasaki. I mean, that's the crazy thing about that is 70 years ago, we're dropping a nuclear or atomic weapon on his city. And now we're having this great conversation as he's bringing in desserts his wife's making every night. We're talking about his kids, and he's worried about anniversaries, and I'm worried about anniversaries and being away from home. And people are people. And that's the thing that this taught me, from criminals to protectees to world leaders. They put their socks on and off just like everybody else. They have the same concerns as everybody else. And some of the myths that you have about these people, that they're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, is not the case. They're just people.
Yeah. And that's what we found out about law enforcement around the world. We're all pretty much the same. The language barrier is a little bit challenging at times, but like you say, now with technology, you got a translator right there on your phone.
Yeah, you got to. And I mean, it's interesting to have you here, because I'm sure you feel the same way too, Murph, is that people have a view of Escobar as he's 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And you were one of the last people to see that wasn't the case, and that he's calling his family members because he has the same concerns as you did, right? And that's his downfall, is that people are people.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Where did this interest in becoming a polygrapher come from? Was that something always in your wheelhouse, or just an opportunity came along?
I got to see the cases that they would work. So for me, I saw that they would give back to the local community. I know you, as your former organization would do, is we rely on the locals for everything. So if we can give anything back to them, that's great. And that's what we would do with our polygraph and some of our forensic services. And so I got to see that, and I'm like, man, I love counterfeit. That's great. I got to work some amazing counterfeit cases, but nothing that rose to working homicides or the crimes against children. So that was the initial draw. And then I would say a case that I had early on in my career, so 2000, I was once again, snot-nosed kid. I'm probably 26 at the time. I don't know what I'm doing. And I've got this pretty peach gig down in Illinois for a protective advance, where I'm doing protection intelligence. And a lot of time, protective intelligence, what that is we'll go out the week before, and there's certain things we will do to try to make sure that we've got some good situational awareness for the event. And then on the game day, we'll try to keep track of any leads or protests, things like that. And the night before the visit, about 5:00, a call comes into the Republican National local headquarters saying, I'm a Marine, I'm a crack shot, I'm going to take out the president tomorrow. And oh man, obviously we took a curveball there, as far as I thought I was going to have a nice, easy day. Now what do I do? And luckily I've got this old grizzled ATF agent that came over to the Secret Service, and just what a unbelievable wealth of knowledge. This guy's name's Bill, and probably had 20 some years on the job and in federal law enforcement. He said, I got you, kid. And we head out to where the old payphone is. Some of your listeners may not even know what a payphone is, but something you dropped change in, and you got to make quarter calls, or you got to hit zero on it and do a collect call, and you'd say, Mom, pick me up, and hang up really quick, and they would know to pick you up. But so for your listeners that are younger, might not know that, but went out to the payphone where we did a call trace, and trace the call. And he went out there and he got a Ziploc bag and he took his Spyderco knife. And I remember it vividly. I don't know how he was able to cut it off the cable, but he literally took a Ziploc bag, put the phone in it, and then somehow cut it off the cable. So he's like, we may need it for forensics. And I was like, wow, that was okay. Didn't expect that. And then he kicks over the trash can next to it and he's going through dirty diapers and, old just clothes, nasty trash. And he sees a styrofoam cup and he goes into it and it's got a rolled up yellow piece of paper and he kind of picks it apart with his knife. And that's the phone number to the Republican local headquarters. And he's like, all right, now I've got a handwriting exemplar. DNA was still in its infancy, but fingerprints. So he bags that up. Now we got to find out where that cup and where the paper came from. So he starts driving us around 90 miles an hour, going to convenience stores, nothing there. Finally, we see this Publix supermarket and we go in there and talking to the manager, and he's so in his moment that he can ask questions, but his level of arousal is such that he's still observing things, and he observes where the coffee is, that there's cups that look just like this cup, and they are. And there's a yellow piece of notepad paper there that happens to have something ripped off, and his piece of yellow paper completely fits. And we know that it's a male voice between 40 and 70. So he says to the manager, who is working on shift at this time between these ages? And he goes, well, here's 3 people. And it's like the second employment app that had handwritten phone numbers on it. He takes that yellow piece of paper and the guy's got a layover on his 2 and a strike through on his 7s. So now we know who it is. And I'm in awe, right? Seeing this.
I am right now.
Yeah, right. And so we're probably 10, 11 o'clock at this point. So we go over to the individual's house with the local police department, knock on the door. The wife answers the door. She's probably in her 70s. Very nice Midwestern lady. And he says, hey, I need to speak with your husband. I'm Secret Service agent this is Agent Beeler. And, oh, absolutely. And she's like, can I get you something to drink? And he's like, might want to put a pot of coffee on. We might be here for a little bit. And walks in, and about 20 feet ahead of us is the subject sitting down. I don't know if he's tying flies for fly fishing. He's just doing something late at night. And Bill looks on the wall as he's approaching him and sees a wedding photo. So they've obviously been married for 40 or 50 years. Then he sees his Marine photo from Vietnam. So he's obviously served the country. I don't know how he's going to use this, but he approaches him, identifies herself, Agent Beeler, I'm Agent so-and-so. He says, we're with Secret Service. Secret Service, we do 2 things. Okay, we stop people from producing counterfeit money, and we stop people from trying to harm our protectees. Now, have you printed any counterfeit money recently? The guy goes, no. He goes, well, now you know why we're here. And he goes, I'm not going to ask you the what, because you know the what. I'm going to talk to you about the why. And I hope the why is you got in a heated political discussion. You said something you wish you wouldn't have said. And I'm talking to you this way because I know you've served this country, which a lot of people don't do. You stepped up. And I know you're a committed man because I've seen that in the wedding photos. So that's what I know about you. I hope the next step that you do is tell us that you made a mistake. Is that what we're talking about? And the guy immediately gave it up. And I'm just like mind blown, right? That
oh, yeah.
From start to finish, just to see the human communication. And in my high school years, I was blessed to have, and to this day, my best friend is deaf. And so communication was always important to me. The lyrics, what you say, the body language of how people, how you say it, and then all aspects of communication. So I put that together, an opportunity presented itself, the polygraph, and I'm like, you know what? That's what I want to do because I feel like I can elicit information and guide investigations.
Wow. I mean, that guy, what a stud. What a story. Holy cow.
Stud. Yeah, Bill.
Man, and then, ladies and gentlemen, that's the kind of people I hear that you got protecting us now. And that's what the whole purpose of Game of Crimes is to bring these kind of stories out so we all hear what's going on out there. Wow, that's so impressive. That's a man. It's a guy who knows his limitations, but also knows how to, like you said, elicit information. If if you watch TV and you believe what you see on TV, which please don't believe it, even Narcos, it's not all true. You would go in there and you'd verbally attack the guy. All right, we know who you are. We know what you did. We know what you're getting ready to do. Get up against the wall. And how much information or cooperation you're going to get then?
100%. Terrible.
As a rookie cop, I started out as a uniformed officer in 75 in Southern West Virginia and thought I was big and bad. I was 19 years old. I couldn't even buy a gun or cigarettes or beer, but I was carrying a gun and putting people in jail. But you watch the old heads, just like you said.
Yeah.
Watch how they treat people, and they treated them with a certain amount of respect and not lose your temper. And then when you ask a question, and we'll get into this because it's in your book as well, everybody. But then let me just mention this right now. It's Tell Me Everything. I've got a copy of it right here. We're going to go into detail more on this a little bit later, so I want to hold off on that. But you ask a question and then listen.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to provide the stimulus, and then you wait, because you've thrown the lure out there. You got to let it work. Okay. Everybody expects you throw the lure, you immediately get it back. That's not how it works. And the key to that is you got to know what they're biting on. So ahead of time, I've done my intel to decide what lure am I going to throw out there. And if you do that, you can be a good fisherman.
Absolutely. And that was when I asked you that. I said, just listen. And I didn't say anything. You felt compelled to answer, didn't you?
100%. Yeah. People want to fill the void.
And people do that to me all the time too.
Mm-hmm.
They ask me a question and just look at me like,
yeah, come on, give me some info.
So I want to get back into that in just a little bit, but you mentioned earlier, and thank you for bringing this to my attention. Ladies and gentlemen, we're recording this on a Monday, April 27th. And if you go back and check the news this past weekend, you saw it in Washington that an individual from California took it upon himself with plans to try and attack the leadership of our country at the Correspondents' Dinner. And so Brad brought that up, and I hadn't thought about that. So thank you, Brad, for bringing it up, because that's very timely. Now, this show's coming out mid-May, I know. So you're getting this information a few weeks later, and things will change between the time that we're recording this till the time that you hear this. But so what we're going to talk about right now is what we know as of today, Monday, April 27th, involving that shooting. And Brad, I saw the news, but someone with your experience, I'm sure that you picked up on things that I didn't notice and our listeners didn't notice either. What can you fill us in with?
Yeah, absolutely. When these things first happen, you've got the Monday morning quarterbacks and you've got the experts that have never been in law enforcement, or they've been in law enforcement, but they've never done protection, that immediately want to weigh in, right? They don't want to wait for the facts. They don't want to wait. That happened at Butler as well. And I think we learned a lot at Butler from things we need to do differently. And there'll be some things that'll come out that we need to do differently here. But people need to understand, because you're like, how could somebody get a gun that close? How could somebody get a gun from across the country? Well, we don't have checkpoints throughout the country just checking people for guns. This is a democracy. And if somebody chooses a certain mode of travel and they put it in their checked baggage, just like you can go to an airline and you can put, weapons in checked baggage as long as you declare them, that's what happened in this situation. So him getting a gun there was not an issue. They talked about, well, how could he become an individual that could check into the hotel? Hilton is one of the largest hotels in the country. There might be thousands of guests there. That's not something that we are going to deny people to come into a hotel. So individual just checking in, that's their right to check in. And depending on the event, they can bring whatever they want. And that's why what you saw was we have checkpoints for people that weren't guests, and then you have checkpoints for people that are guests. And that's what that checkpoint was. So if somebody was a guest, they've got to come off an elevator, then they got to go up an escalator. And then prior to that, there is a magnetometer checkpoint. And in that magnetometer checkpoint, everyone has to get screened. What happened is that individual waited till I think they were breaking down the magnetometers because they weren't allowing any more access at that point. And he decided to start a 100-yard sprint. When he did that, he was immediately given verbal commands. And then what you didn't see off camera was there were a phalanx of other agents and uniform division officers that took him down. Now, we can sit there and question, how that was done. Should we have had some kind of barrier? Whatever. He was still hundreds of meters away. He would have had to go through multiple different areas to try to get into the ballroom which was locked. So from that standpoint, everything worked. Okay. So that's what we know at this point. I think a family member had provided some information about him being a threat. I think there's something to be given there as far as why that wasn't presented to us in a quicker manner. But the other thing I want to point out real quick, Murph, is that these were uniform division officers. And I mean that because they don't get the credit that they deserve. A lot of times it's just they're agents. They're just this, they're that. Uniform division officers 24/7 is one of the hardest jobs to do. You're protecting the White House. You're traveling with the president and other protectees doing magnetometers. At Butler, it was a uniform division officer counter sniper that within 4 seconds came on target and shot Crooks, taking him out as a threat. That was a uniform division officer. We go all the way back to the 1950s. One of the only Secret Service personnel to lose their life, Leslie Kofeld, was a uniformed division officer that lost his life at the Blair House for President Truman. So I just wanted to point that out, is because a lot of times just people don't give the uniformed division officers and what we call now the White House police what they deal with a lot of things on an everyday basis that agents don't.
So speaking of Butler in Pennsylvania, and I'm not Saturday morning, Monday morning quarterbacking anybody. I'm not backseat driving here. But with the sniper on the roof, they're always scanning for targets. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily with the scope on the gun, but they got the binoculars that they're using. Did they not pick up on the guy on the roof earlier?
Yeah, so I guess what I can say is I will only really talk about things that were in the congressional report. And I think if people read that, it's pretty eye-opening, because what it boiled down to is you have an outdoor event, and just like the Hilton, people don't understand. They're like, well, why did the Secret Service pick that place? Or why would they do the event at a hotel? We have very little say on where something's done. If the president and his staff wants to go somewhere, our goal is to do everything possible to make that event safe. If it was up to us, we'd be inside every time, and we'd have something built at the White House where everybody's got to come through White House security beforehand, and we've got all our assets right there. We're always playing the home field advantage. So yeah, we would never want to have to do it outside, especially in light of things that have happened in the Ukrainian conflict, what we've seen with drones, so on and so forth. So we would have everything inside. We would only have friends and family allowed to show up if we could control that. But obviously we can't. So what you saw there was, you saw a sprawling outdoor event. You had basically almost the entire agency going from the Democratic National Convention to the Republican National Convention. So we were obviously augmenting our personnel with HSI, which do an amazing job. We've always done this, and they are trained. They are amazing personnel. So it wasn't a personnel issue. And then we obviously use locals. The issue is that when we're in New York, and Murph, you understand this, when you're in a big city, some of these larger police departments, they have specialized units. That's all they do. They do drugs. In New York, we've got a team that just does protection. And so they are so well versed in this is how things are going to go. The communication is dialed in. I think what you saw there is you saw multiple municipalities kind of cobbled together, and we had a security room and we had a command post that was off-site. And the problem with that is you had certain entities in the command post, and then you had the state police and you had Secret Service on site. So the communication was kind of disjointed. You had stovepiped communication from the standpoint of text strings that weren't coming into the command post. As far as we see this guy here, we see it there. And we made certain assumptions. Unfortunately, we assumed that site, which is an AGR building, is a sprawling site. It's 3, 4, 5 buildings. We had a local emergency services team that was there observing from there to the site. When you look at Counter Sniper is basically in the site scanning out. That's the whole point of it. So in that sense, we probably should have posted numerous agents just denying people entry into that building instead of having a team there, a local team that was scanning into the event. So also, we probably should have had more personnel that did not have assigned duties. Some of those free teams were rendering aid. It was a very hot day, so they were rendering aid to people that were falling out from heat exhaustion, those types of things. So we should have had more dedicated personnel that call comes in, boom, go check that out. As far as the response, and that's the problem. It's the response. If we have to respond, whether counter sniper, the shift, or the counter assault team, we've failed. If any of those things have to happen, we've failed in our duties. We're not bodyguards for Secret Service agents. The Secret Service agents focus on preparation, and we have to prepare and control the environment so we don't have to use those amazing responses. And that's what happened on that day. Is I think you saw a very heroic, courageous response, but the fact that we have to rely on a response means we've failed in our planning of that situation. So a lot to learn there. I think they've already made numerous changes with our capabilities. And when you red team something, I think you do a lot better. And what I mean by red team, for your listeners that don't understand that, is having somebody look at things from an op force to look at weaknesses. And I do that when I'm doing interviewing. You look at special ops teams, say, for instance, the Osama bin Laden raid. They would do that on a daily basis, red team what their plans are to see where their shortcomings are. And I think with the Secret Service, you're going to see a lot more of that moving forward to try to target harden everything that they do on a daily basis.
Yeah, because we've seen the criminals change on a regular basis. We're just not quite as quick, especially if it comes to a legal issue, because Congress could take forever. But thank you for clarifying all that. That's and that's why I say here on the show, ladies and gentlemen, I'm guilty of it too. Don't believe what you see on TV. Do your own research. Then God gave us all a brain. You make up your mind on what you believe is true and not true. But please do your research. Don't accept what you see on TV, and don't accept what politicians tell you. And that's just Murph's personal opinion about everything there, Brad. While you were working as a polygrapher, you had a second job, right? As an instructor?
Yeah, I was blessed to be, for the last 7 years of my career, I was down at the Federal Polygraph School, which is called the National Center of Credibility Assessment. And definitely helped me kind of round out my skill set a little bit, because you had 31 federal agencies represented there, and a lot of their training cadre were stationed there. So from the intelligence community, the CIA, NSA, DEA reps were there, FBI. And what I thought I knew, I don't want to say I had an ego, but I had an ego, and it got knocked back a little bit when I got to see how impressive the individuals that were stationed there were. And it definitely kicked me into gear to want to knock it up a notch a little bit. So I think you need that in life. If you're in your own echo chamber thinking, celebrating your wins and not having people there to let you know there's other levels to this. Just like in jiu-jitsu, there's white belt, blue belt, purple belt, black belt, or brown belt, and then black belt. I think I was at a blue belt level when I got down there, and definitely forced me to kind of do a self-assessment.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it's all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
You learn it from the pros, the people with the experience. So that really wasn't a second job. That was just an additional responsibility.
Yeah, that was my primary responsibility. And then I was lucky to still be able to work, thankfully, with the South Carolina Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And Kevin Atkins, their leader there, I think is one of the best in the country. And what they do is they handle all the cyber tips that come in on child exploitation. So they'll look at inappropriate images, queries that are coming from South Carolina IP addresses, and then they'll also be proactive and set up stings where people that are coming to meet 12 and 13-year-old girls, they will be greeted by an undercover. And then we will polygraph them, because after having, as an agency, done 1,000 of these, we started doing this in 2004, where we would test these individuals. And after doing it 1,000 times, what we realized is 60% of these people were hands-on in their adult years. So we were able to really triage the true boogeymen out there to understand that these are not just somebody that's looking at inappropriate images, and there's not just somebody coming to meet a minor. It's somebody that's engaged in this type of activity before. So that was helpful to get them the justice that they deserved, and hopefully get them off the streets so they couldn't do it to somebody else.
Brother, I'll tell you what, that's a spot near and dear to my heart. Not just child exploitation, but human trafficking in general.
Yes.
I've been educated on that in the last couple of years, and now support a couple of groups that have full-time jobs trying to save victims, trying to prevent issues. It's just last year I was asked by an organization that's run by an American here out in Wyoming, but it's based in Medellin, Colombia. Mm-hmm. Because of death threats, he couldn't go to the United Nations annual human exploitation symposium in Vienna, Austria. So I went over and was honored to go over and represent them. And it was so encouraging to see how many people around the world. I mean, there were over 600 organizations, NGOs, non-government organizations, participating in this, a lot of them virtually streaming in. But then to see the members of the United Nations from the different countries, that was so disappointing. You're seeing them talk about, well, our meeting from 3 years ago, we've almost got the notes transcribed. Well, that's not any intelligence. That's now history.
Yeah.
I went there with the purpose of making a statement, and my statement was minimal, believe me, because we had two former victims from Colombia, a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old. And I'm not ashamed to say it, when both of them, they wouldn't let the 17-year-old come into the meeting. So she came in virtually and made a statement. And the 18-year-old was with us. She made a statement, and I teared up on both of them to realize what these young girls had gone through, and they were brave enough and were strong enough to overcome the circumstances, and they're not letting their past dictate their future. It's just, man, it's just so heartening to see people like that.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's one of those things, Murph, where, as you know, in the protective environment or executive protection, whether it be a CEO or whether it be a president, many of these people have means and they can obtain protection financially from their corporation or obviously with the Secret Service, the fact that they're a head of state. But kids can't choose the environment that they're born into. Right. And that's why we've got to be that guard for them. That's why we have to be their salvation as much as possible. So I think, you look at drug cases, for instance, and you know this very, very well. Everybody kind of dabbles into it. You obviously take the lead, but sometimes the FBI comes into it. Sometimes the locals come to it. There's asset forfeiture involved. Sometimes everybody's on the same team, but you know what? Sometimes they're not as much on the same team as the other person, right?
Right.
When it comes to kid cases, it's not like that at all. Everybody, when you're in a chat operation, an undercover chat operation, there's maybe 15 or 20 different local, state, and federal agencies involved, all with a unified purpose. And there's nobody questioning who gets this, who gets that, who gets the credit, who doesn't get the credit. And that's the beauty of what I saw there for sure.
Wow. It's just very heartening to hear you say that. There's, I think the good man upstairs gives us all gifts and abilities. I'm pretty sure mine would not involve taking down people involved in child exploitation because I'm afraid I'd end up in jail.
Yeah, it's that part of it's hard, turning that part of your brain off. And I had to invest in a lot of metaphorical duct tape. And what I mean by that is the first case I worked in 2003, the subject made a disclosure about something he did to an infant. And I was with my partner, and I did this for the listeners that can't see. I just furrowed my brow slightly because that's what you do. You have a guttural reaction, Murph, like you just did, right?
Right.
And I learned very, very quickly that individual, after that first admission, shut down and immediately lawyered up because he saw I was giving him judgment. And the thing about this is I realized in order to elicit information, you have to have that metaphorical Catholic confessional where you allow them a safe space, you don't judge them. I talk to them just like I'm talking to you in the same vocal tonality and pacing that I'm talking to you right now. And I keep those kind eyes, those soft eyes, and I don't judge. And that was a big learning lesson for me, is that people that hurt kids, primarily prepubescent, we like to call them pedos. We like to call them various certain terms. That term is overused. But when you run into one of those people, you understand they're operating similar to counterintelligence operatives overseas. Just how a counterintelligence operate would spot, assess, target. You've taken all these classes, counterintelligence classes. The same thing that we do to have to look out for or to try to turn a foreign source is the same thing that they're trying to do to our children. And they're grooming the person, they're grooming the situation. How many times do one of these cases happen and they interview people and they're like, oh, there's no way. John was such a nice guy. There's no way this could be true because he's groomed the situation. And now, sadly, it's happening on our online gaming system. It's just happening on our phone. It's no longer the free candy van in the neighborhood. The free candy van is coming in through our Wi-Fi, and our kids are seeing that in real time. So that's the scary part.
Absolutely. And folks, please listen. I don't have the experience in there. Brad does. I mean, you're hearing advice from an expert who has the experience, the expertise to know what he's talking about. He's somebody worth listening to. And the reason I'm saying all that, you've heard me say it before here on the show, is get involved in your children's lives.
Yes.
Look at what they're looking at on their phones when they're on social media. It's horrible what's out there. The things that they have access to are just, a lot of it is very disgusting, but
yeah,
their brains haven't developed to the point where they can judge right from wrong at a very young age. So they need parental input and encouragement and advice.
Yeah, Murph, well said. And it's one of these things where the video games or the broad-based, non-encrypted platforms, that's where they spot. That's the playground. That's where these individuals spot the kid, and then they try to take the kid to an encrypted platform, and that's where the crime happens. So when people talk about Roblox and things like this and they get afraid of it, that's where the kids are spotted. It's not where the crime takes place. The crime takes place when they're able to move them off that platform to Snapchat, text, other things like that. They're encrypted. So, and I'll even say, even those platforms, many of them, such as Snapchat, cooperate with law enforcement in a great way. It's just the further you go down the rabbit hole after they've spotted your kid, that's when the criminality happens. I mean, we got a law here in South Carolina passed. Mr. Guffey lost his son. His son was 17 and had been sextorted. In the course of an hour, had sent an inappropriate photo somewhere, thinking he was talking to a female, and it was actually an online predator that was trying to extort him. And he said, "I'm going to send this to your entire friend group." And sadly, he went downstairs, got his father's gun, and killed himself. And this happens, and thankfully the laws are trying to catch up with the criminality. And as you know, with drug laws, that's always hard to do. You're always chasing your tail. So it's up to the parents to truly know what are your kids doing online and have enough good communication with your kid that if they do make a mistake, whether that be drinking at 2:00 in the morning or whether it be somewhere online, that you have enough of a communication avenue with your child that they can reach out to you and say, "Dad, Mom, I'm in trouble. What should I do?" So that now you can make an informed decision.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Wow. I didn't expect to get into all this, but
sorry about that turn.
No. That's what I like about these shows. I don't like scripted. I mean, I do have questions that I want to ask you about, but I love getting off into what we're talking about with the Secret Service, what really happens. I told you before we started that the head of the Secret Service was Sean Curran, is an old neighbor of mine from when we lived up in the D.C. area in Northern Virginia. I mean, just really admire the guy for the sacrifices he's made and the responsibility he's taken on.
Yeah, it's a tough job because one of those things, sorry to interrupt there, Murph, but it's one of those jobs where up to Butler, we were 100,000-0. I mean, we had 100,000 victories in a row with all our protectees with not having incidents. So it just shows someone in that position and any agent is very, very difficult because you don't know it's going to be a Tuesday at 2:00. Is it going to be a Friday at 1 a.m. where that incident happens and you can't make a mistake because obviously the media is going to pick it up and you're going to be judged as a result.
And if you're wondering who Sean is, he's the really tall guy there when President Trump was shot in the ear. He's the only tall guy there. Yeah. He was like a head taller than everybody else there. But let's get a little bit more into this, your life and this deception detection and the listening information. I've worked with polygraphers throughout my career. I don't, and by saying working, I brought in people for them to put on the lie detector. I don't know if that's even the right term to use, but we all watch TV and we've seen these movies and heard the stories. So tell us the truth. Can you really tell when someone's lying by hooking them up to that machine?
So it's all part of a process, right? So if without polygraph, this is what I always say to people, Murph, without polygraph, we're about 55% effective at determining truth and fiction, meaning we all think we're better than we are. It's that whole Dunning-Kruger effect. I think it's 71% of Americans, when you talk to them, say they're above average intelligence. Well, the math doesn't math on that one, right?
You're not going to hear that here on Game of Thrones either.
We all think we're better than we are at this, meaning I'm sure there were informants that you trusted. I'm sure there were criminals that you thought did something that didn't. We all make mistakes. So polygraph for us is a huge force multiplier. And it's part of a credibility assessment process, meaning you have lyrics, you have soundtrack, and then you have the music video. So what I'm trying to do is I want to see the words, then I want to see how the words are stated, because there's a difference between no and no. Very subtle, but one is a question. One is, do you believe me? How we say it, and is it congruent with the body language? Body language is not a great detector of deception. It's a really good reception of message, meaning I can see if you're active listening to me. I can see if you didn't understand something. That's very, very helpful. So for instance, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you, pre-emoji, Murph, where your significant other sent you an email, you asked her how she was doing, and she said, fine.
Yeah.
Right? What does that mean? I don't have an emoji to go with. I'm probably in trouble, right? But Are we talking flowers trouble or are we talking jewelry trouble, right? Now, if I can call her and I can say, how are you doing? And she goes, I'm fine. I think she's fine. Or she may say, no, I'm fine. Okay, I'm not fine. This is jewelry. But if I can see her, then I can put all that together and it makes it so much better. So for me, when I want to have you in front of me, I want to be able to baseline you. I want to be able to prepare. I want to be able to ask you certain questions. I want to ask behavioral indicator questions. And what I mean by that is, what do you think should happen to somebody that does X, Y, and Z? And if it's a felony, most innocent people will tell you a harsh punishment. It's kind of like if a vase breaks and I ask my son, hey, what do you think should happen to somebody that breaks a vase? Oh, I think they should get in trouble. They should get grounded. And I ask my daughter, what do you think should happen? Maybe if they said they're sorry, it's okay. I think my daughter broke the vase, right? And it works there, but it works in a murder. I had a 10-year-old, sadly, that was killed here in South Carolina. And I asked the person, what do you think should happen to somebody that kills a kid? And he's like, everybody deserves a second chance.
Mm.
That's, to me, the biggest red flag of the red flag. So that'd be one behavioral indicator. Then I have what's like a dartboard indicator question. This is, where's the dartboard? And what I mean by that is car salesmen use this, and we use it in investigations. We say, give me 3 reasons, Murph, why you think somebody would traffic in drugs. If you had to come up with 3 reasons.
Money, greed, ego.
Okay. Now, that can be from your experience of multiple decades. That's what you've heard people do, and that's what you've seen people as to why they did it. But if I ask just somebody a one-off that if they didn't do it, that bad thing, they may give me just pop culture answers. I'm looking for specificity, meaning I'll give you for instance, on a homicide case, I asked somebody, can you come up with 3 reasons why somebody would shoot another person? They said, I don't know, maybe they were afraid. I don't know, maybe they were disrespected. I don't know. Maybe they had just bought a really nice new gun and they were showing it off to their friends. And when they were showing it off to their friends, the other people saw it being showed off and they brandished their guns, and then a shootout happened after that. Wow. That's really specific. What do you think he ultimately admitted? He just got a brand new weapon and tricked it out and was showing his buddies, and a rival gang was driving by, saw it, and things kicked off from there. But that answer to those questions is showing me the dartboard, because that allows me to come up with an investigative strategy as to why I think they did it. And it'll be more likely to be that social media reel that I'm playing for them of stimulus that I'm hoping they're constantly swiping right and hitting thumbs up, because it's now a more tailored message. It's surgical strike, like a JDAM missile versus carpet bombing in communication. And then lastly, I would ask, is there any reason why? And what I mean by this is, you're working a drug case and the subject says they were on the south side of town. Something happened on the north side of town. Hey, John, is there any reason why license plate readers or GPS on your phone or any video cameras would show that you were up in Kings Highway and Natural Bridge at such and such time? If they were on the south side, what are they going to say? No. If they have doubts and they're afraid they may have picked up on one of those things, what are they going to say a lot of times? I hope not. Or they try to get out in front of it. Oh, you know what? That's right. I did have to go up there. Man, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you that, Murph. I had to go up there and, man, it just slipped my mind. I had to go talk to John, right? And then you ask some more questions because they're not prepared for that. The truth is easy, as you know, Murph, right? It's a movie reel that runs end to end. What is deception? Deception is the movie reel that runs end to end, but they cut out something. And then they had to insert something new. And then they have to look at you and see, are you buying this nonsense of the new stuff that I inserted? And are they going to try too hard? Are they going to add too many details? So even with all that, without polygraph, we're still going to be in the 50s and 60s. So polygraph gets us into the 80s or right around 90%. It's not perfect. Shouldn't be used in court, but it's very good for shaping an investigation if you use it at the right time, at the right place, on the right person.
And you got the right polygrapher.
Yes.
So the process, if I bring in, let's say, an informant, we want to vet him to see if he's being truthful about his activities. I just don't bring him in a room and you put straps on him and plug him into the machine and start asking questions. Can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, there's going to be a process to it because it's a significant life event, right? Because that informant is either looking to get out of time or get some money, right? And that can be a blessing and a curse because that's going to be your best informant. But you as a case officer, you want that person to pass, right?
Yeah.
And I'm on your team. So sometimes that can be a little problematic because I don't want to give Murph bad news. This is the guy that's going to get him the big time. It's going to get him the next Chapo. It's going to get, so that's where you got to be really careful about confirmation bias because you've tried to put a halo on this informant. Oh, it's my best informant. He's got me this. He's got me that. Well, what do informants do? They're traitors and they lie, right? I mean, we have to use them. But because that's the beauty of it. But at the base point, they're a cheater. They're cheating on the people that they love. And it's always like that in relationships, right? Somebody's like, I don't know how my girlfriend cheated on me. Well, didn't she cheat on her previous boyfriend with you? And that's a pretty good predictor. She's going to cheat on you, right? So
Yeah.
that's the problem with informants. You use them because they're traitors, okay? Or because you just got a great case on them. But what's the problem with that? What's their origin story is they're traitors. And you want to obviously put a halo on them because you're trying to do impression management on me saying, oh, he's such a good guy. Well, now if I go in with that aspect, that's a problem. And I'll tell you real quick and then I'll go back. But I had a biker case similar to this, and the ATF and the locals, we basically had a missing female. And it was a motorcycle club. I don't want to call it a motorcycle gang, but it was a motorcycle club where you had a 1%er and you had a hang around.
That's a gang.
Okay, it's a gang. We'll call it a gang. I've been ripped in comments by saying, don't call it a motorcycle gang, right?
Oh, I get that every time I do it. It's a gang, everybody.
Okay, I'm going to use Murph's here. It's a gang, all right? So we got the hang around who's not in the gang, and then you got a 1%er, and it goes back to the 50s. 99% of bikers allegedly did the right thing. The 1% did the bad acts and gave everybody a bad name. He had a 1% patch. He was about 6'5", 230. He looked like from typecasting from Hollywood as far as being an evil human being. And then the 5'6", 130-pound guy looked like an accountant. And they're both dating this female in question, and they're both really good friends. So basically, what's your thought process? Well, we're going to test the hang around, hoping that he saw or has inside information as to why the 1%er killed this woman or caused her disappearance. So that's the way we start. And the question on the polygraph, something along the lines of, did you participate in the disappearance of that female? And he fails. But once again, I've got blinders on. I've put confirmation bias to him. I've put a halo on him. So about 2 hours, he keeps saying, Brad, that's not it. And I'm theming him. Hey, I'm Secret Service. I'll protect you. I protect people for a living. I know you're afraid of him. Wrong time, wrong place. I'm thinking that's the money that's going to get him to get the information up. And he keeps saying that's not it. And luckily, 2 detectives are outside the room and they keep hearing, that's not it. That's not it. They knock on the door. You got to let your ego down. They come in. And a few minutes later, the detective asks, keep saying that's not it. What is it? And he goes, oh, I killed her, cut her up in 6 pieces and threw her in the river. I'll take you and show you. Wow. I just couldn't think he did that bad thing. So I had the blinders on, right? And that's the problem with informants or so on and so forth. So I'll go back now to where nobody keeps information in diaries anymore, Murph. They put it online. We're egotistical. We're narcissistic. People talk about identifying narcissists. We're all narcissists to a certain point. We need that validation. And I'm going to use that. Okay, so I'm going to get a dossier, criminal record checks. If I can walk through their house, so be it. So I got a good sight picture of what makes them tick. Then I'm going to have a great first impression. And I do this not just to manipulate. I'm not going to try to manipulate them with it. I want to establish credibility. If I have a cold, clammy handshake when I shake the person that I'm going to polygraph, what do they think about me? Indecisive, incompetent, whatever the case may be.
Why are you nervous?
Why am I nervous? Yeah, this could be this could be an El Chapo case type thing where I'm testing the informant that may get us that guy, right? So I'm sure you had informants that walked in that said, hey, I'm going to get you the big man, right? So as a result of that, I'm nervous. So I'm going to spray my hand with antiperspirant before, when I wake up in the morning. Now I'm going to have a dry handshake. Before I come around the corner and meet your subject, I'm going to rub my hands together and make them warm. So now I have a warm, dry handshake. I'm going to have eye contact. I'm going to find out their preferred name, and I'm going to use that. It's the most beautiful thing in the English language to the other person is their own first name. I'm not going to introduce myself by my title, but by my first name. They know they're at the DEA office. Okay, so if I go by Murph, I'm going to say I'm Murph. They're going to confess, and they're going to confide in Murph, not Steve, not Senior Special Agent Murphy. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm Brad with the Secret Service. So I've done all that. I've had an amazing first contact. I've set up the room to be like a Catholic confessional, not look like a traditional interrogation room. And so that's our starting point. And then I'm going to ask you those BAI questions. I'm going to ask family, education, employment, and leisure questions. And the key, Murph, is leisure. If you want one hack, if your listeners want one hack to better themselves in their personal and professional life, it's ask what people do in their free time. That's it. I can't choose my parents. My education and my employment may have been based upon where I grew up, what opportunities I had. But even in people in prison, if you ask them, what do you do in your free time? They're still going to have certain things that they do that are going to blow you away. And I learned this in grad school where I'd go down to the St. Louis City Jail and we did a research project. And in the St. Louis City Jail, They would hold them for 48 to 72 hours. And we would go there and we'd ask them about gang affiliation, drug activity, and we'd do a piss test with them. And it was paid by the hour. It was the highest paying job on campus because nobody wanted to do it. And I'm a snot-nosed kid from the country. But I go down there and I ask people, hey man, how do you make that product? Whatever drug we're talking about, methamphetamines. Oh, I get a 2-liter bottle. I get a match striker. I get some Coleman fuel, X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. Okay. And tell me more about that. How do you become a good pimp? Hey, how do you work a street corner? How do you work your crew? I knew none of this stuff, but you know what? When people feel, Murph, like they're teaching you, their eyes light up. The dopamine is exuding from their, those neurochemicals that are associated with me. And what am I not doing? I'm not asking them about that bad thing. So that cortisol stress hormone comes down. This is a significant life event. Now the heart rate goes from 140 to now 80. So now I allow them to be able to be truthful. And I want them to be truthful. I want everybody to pass my test. And then if they don't, okay, then we got to do some extra work. But because I've built that respect on the front end, I can leverage that if I do have to interrogate them.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. How long does the actual polygraph examination typically take? Once you've got the machine on and you're asking your yes/no questions.
I mean, our pretest is probably going to be an hour, and then the actual test doesn't take that long, 15, 20 minutes. And then after that, based upon how they did, is going to dictate where we go from there. Obviously, if they have problems, we want to find out why they had those problems on the exam. And that's when we try to be their buddy. Blame other things besides them, understand but don't agree with, diminish the impact of their actions, demonstrate tactical empathy, and focus on the why and not the what.
There you go. Wow. So we see, I was fortunate. I came on with the government when we did not have to take polygraphs. Not that I would have failed it, but you never know. But on the movies and on TV,
yeah,
and you hear stories about job applicants going through and they at the end they said one of my questions was showing deception. Is that just is that an inside thing you do, or to try to get them to change their story, or what's the purpose of that?
I don't think so. I think if you talk federally, there's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of guardrails as to how we talk to people. And I think if somebody had a problem, that's why they're going to be spoken to in that manner, is that they did have a problem. The days of telling everybody they failed and using it as an interrogation ploy and X, Y, and Z, everything's recorded now. So I think sunshine's the ultimate disinfectant. And a lot of the things that you traditionally heard being done in law enforcement are no longer done. And that's for the better, because I don't want a false confession. That's the worst day in any polygraph examiner's life. So I think a lot of that is gone the way of the dodo from that standpoint.
Excellent. This is very educational. And Brad, we've been going now for a little over an hour. So Brad has agreed to join us again tomorrow. We're going to talk more. Well, I've only mentioned his book so far, but tomorrow we're going to go into it a little bit more. Here's the cover. Tell me everything. And I have to look at it. It's the Secret Service Agent's Proven Strategies for Earning Trust, Revealing the Truth, and Communicating with Anyone. You get the copies on Amazon. We're going to go over that at the end of tomorrow. So, Brad, thank you very much for giving us your time and being transparent with these stories today. Thank you for bringing attention to what Secret Service agents really do and not letting the media taint my opinion, which I did. I got to apologize for that. I preach this all the time, and I'm the sucker that fell for it. But thank you, brother. Looking forward to having you back tomorrow. In the meantime, everybody out there, stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless.